Thank you for joining us today for our Advocacy in the Global Environment online information session. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. David Rare, who has helped design this program. Dr. Rare has over 20 years of experience in the advocacy area and has been immensely successful in his career. Washington Life magazine has named him to the Power 100 for his work. My name is Jonathan Ackman, and I'm the Senior Recruitment and Enrollment Specialist here at the Graduate School of Political Management. I want to go through a brief agenda of this session today. I'll talk briefly about our admissions. I'll give an overview of the Graduate School of Political Management. Dr. Rare will then talk about the Advocacy in the Global Environment program, and we'll talk a bit about some career outcomes, and we'll save some time for questions. A couple of deadline-related notes. Our fall 2014 deadline is June 15th, although I'd recommend all applicants apply by May 15th, which is our priority deadline if you want to be considered for merit aid. We have high demand for our inaugural class in our Advocacy in the Global Environment program, so the sooner you apply, the sooner you'll get a decision. We're hoping to cap the incoming class at about 15, and we're expecting a selective group. So just be conscious of that upcoming deadline. If you're not able to start in the fall, we have entry points year-round. You can start in the spring. The spring deadline is November 15th, or you can start in the summer of 2015. That deadline is April 15th. A couple brief notes about admissions requirements, and it's a pretty standard grad school application. You'll need to have a bachelor's degree. You'll have to complete our online form and the application fee, 3 letters of recommendation, and actually with the letters of recommendation, they can be any combination of academic or professional. So 3 professional or 3 academic or any combination. We require transcripts from all undergraduate institutions. We require a personal statement, and we require a resume with education and work history. If your undergraduate GPA was above 3.0, you're not required to take the GRE. If it's below 3.0, you may have to take the GRE, and depending on the amount of work experience you've had, you may be able to apply for a waiver. And to find out more information about that, you can go to our website, which I'll post later on in this session. If you're an international applicant, and we plan on having several international applicants in our program, you'll have to take the TOEFL, and you'll have to submit an international transcript to an international transcript evaluator. That process is fairly easy, and our admissions team can walk you through that. So what is the Graduate School of Political Management? Many schools teach policy. The Graduate School of Political Management teaches what we call applied politics and strategic communication. While we do teach theory and research, because that's an important component of any academic program, the hallmark of all of our programs are teaching you practical skills. So we teach tactics and skills that will enable you to be a practitioner in your chosen profession, be it running an electoral campaign, be it public affairs, lobbying, PR, international advocacy. Will help with those tangible skills. A bit about the school. We are obviously located in Washington, D.C., and Dr. Rare will talk about some of the global opportunities that presents. All of our classes are held in the evening, so almost all of our students are working during the day and taking classes at night. Most of our classes are held from about 7:10 to 9:40. Some of our classes are from 6 to 8, so it's a mix. Now, all of our faculty, many are political scientists by background or scientists in their respective academic disciplines, but nearly everyone is a practitioner, and that's a requirement of our school. So if you're taking a class in, say, polling or lobbying, your professor will have studied polling and lobbying, but also is an active pollster or a lobbyist. Now we have 4 master's degrees. We have our political management program, which is really geared towards people who want an advanced skill set in the campaign process. We have our legislative affairs program, which is geared towards students who want to advance understanding of how Capitol Hill works and the lobbying field. We have a strategic public relations program, which is designed for students who want to be directors of PR at a major agency, or press secretaries, or directors of communications. And we have our Advocacy in the Global Environment program, which Dr. Ray will get to in a second. Now, the political management, strategic PR, and Advocacy in the Global Environment programs have online components as well. So if you're not necessarily physically able to be in Washington, you can still earn one of these master's degrees. We also have graduate certificates in PAC management, campaign strategy, community advocacy, digital politics, public relations, and global public relations. The certificates focus primarily on the core of each of the master's degree programs. The certificates are generally 5 or 6 classes, and if I can skip back for a second, our master's degree programs, our political management program is a total of 12 classes. Our legislative affairs program is a total of 11 classes. Our strategic PR program is a total of 11 as well, and our Advocacy in the Global Environment program is 13 classes. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Dr. Rare, who will kind of run through the Advocacy in the Global Environment program.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Welcome, everybody, on this explanation of this new master's degree at the Graduate School of Political Management. And we position this because, for those of you who are not familiar with GSPM, it has been around for about 30 years. We are the best of the best in teaching campaigns, advocacy, lobbying, public relations, as well as campaign management. And with the world moving global, and with commerce moving international, and with nonprofits and NGOs touching all points of the world, we thought we could further elevate the great reputation of GSPM in these disciplines and craft a master's degree that would educate graduate students on how to be successful around the globe. This is a unique program. There is not another university in the world that has a master's program like this. We think, additionally, I think it's unique because I've been intimately involved in every step of hiring faculty, developing the syllabi, looking at the books, talking about the curriculum. But we think this gives graduate students a very unique perspective on the world. So whatever they do, and we'll get into potential positions and careers in a few moments, they will be well-tested and well-founded in academic research on what works in terms of impacting or influencing governments, regions, individuals around the planet. As Jonathan said, there's program flexibility. If you're part-time, that's generally taking 2 or 3 classes a semester. It could take up to 2 years to finish. Full-time, if you're just taking as many courses as you can, 18 months or so. We have both face-to-face and online programs. And the interesting thing about this program is if you're face-to-face with us in Washington, D.C., or if you're online anywhere in the world, we still come together through our global perspective residencies where you'll be interacting with all the students. The courses themselves have been designed, as you can see from the top, the leaders of tomorrow. We touch on topics like what's going on with political campaigns around the world. Why is that important? Because we have to understand how leaders get elected to understand how we can then influence them, whether for corporations, for nonprofits, for NGOs. We need to understand what are the various tools used in global advocacy. And the tools, for example, polling may be used differently in North America than it is in Latin America. Our Latin America experts tell us that you have to literally go door to door in the Latin American countries, where we do polling now in the United States and Canada over the phone, and in many cases through social media. Cultural aspects of global engagement. You don't have to be from the country you're lobbying or advocating in, or from the region to be successful, but you must understand and be sensitive to the cultural aspects of that area. And I know with talking with potential students, one of the things I always talk about is people who are in the Middle East will have meetings with very important people in the governments there, and they'll sit at their desk, they'll talk to them about a program, they'll come back and they'll say, God, that was great. But few people know that real decisions are made over meals. So you only are doing well in the Middle East if you position yourself after that initial meeting to be invited to a lunch or a dinner where business is actually being conducted. If you don't know that, you can't be successful. Comparative political management environments. If you're in the U.S., you think every country's like the U.S. It turns out that only 5% of all countries in the world are kind of democratic republics. 95% of them, which are not totalitarian, are parliamentary systems, and they range from Sweden, where members of parliament are elected by having their names on a list in a certain order, to traditionally those in Great Britain or in other nations where people are running in districts. They don't necessarily need to be there, but they need to run in the district and get elected. Once they're in government, what are the differences? What's the environment like in order to impact the decision-making of the government and of the legislature? We're going to be talking about international public relations and global advocacy. How can you use social media around the world? How can you not only react, but how can you act to move forward those ideas that you care about in terms of public relations, international, and then finally, our global perspective residencies. I think this is really the most exciting portion of our program. The master's degree requires 4 classes around the world, where before you go to Istanbul or to Sao Paulo or to London or to Washington, D.C., if you're not from the United States, you study about the capital, the region, the country. We then take you on an extremely intensive 7 to 8 day program in country where you meet executives, media leaders, legislators, politicians, party heads, all designed to give you an on-the-ground understanding of how decisions are really made and how you can learn to influence them no matter who you work for. As I mentioned, the global track includes in 2014-2015, Washington, D.C., Istanbul, Sao Paulo, Hong Kong, and Brussels, where the European Union is. We are rapidly moving because of the great response we're getting from our graduate students we've been experimenting with these programs over the last year or two. We're rapidly moving to having regional tracks, one in Latin America, one in Europe, one in Asia, one in Middle East and Africa. I'm hoping to have a separate Africa track as well. And the student reaction to the global residencies, I'm going to take a second so you can read this slide from one of our graduate students who was in the Legislative Affairs program who went to Istanbul. This is Dr. Rare again. Literally all of the students who come back from these global residencies just rave about the unique, very fulfilling, very engaging participation they've had with influential leaders all around the world.
Question for you, Dr. Rare. Can you give some examples of the specific places that students go to on these trips?
Well, as I mentioned, we spend about a week in Istanbul, and in our previous Istanbul encounters, we have panels of people talking about public relations in the Near East and the Middle East. We have CEOs of really major companies. I mean, some of the top global companies in the world, or their representatives in the regions talking about how they influence governments and make sure that their company's interests are furthered in those regions, to working with academics who can give us really an academic perspective. I know in Istanbul we're associated with Koç University, which is one of the finest universities in that region, if not the world. As Jonathan mentioned early in the presentation, as part of this program, we are also offering, really for the first time, a Global Public Relations Certificate. For those of you who may be in public relations already, may have taken communications in undergraduate or graduate school, you understand that the communications is more than just writing press releases or researching and having presentations. You know, in my 30 years of advocacy in the United States and frankly around the world, I found it's really hard to ensure that what you want to communicate is understood and appreciated by those who you are trying to communicate. And this certificate is going to be really the first 18 credits, ensuring that you are trained through professionals who do this around the world and in North America every day, learning from what's worked for them, what's not worked for them, so you don't make those mistakes. And then at the end, you know, you might say, you know, Dr. Rare, I'm really happy with the certificate. I've gotten a promotion. I've gotten a new position. It's helped me launch really in a whole new sector of industry. But you also might say, this has been so rewarding, I want to continue to get the master's degree. And all of those 18 credits will either transfer into a master's in global advocacy or a master's in strategic public relations, giving you additional kind of intellectual clout, which you can use to advance your career. You know, in talking to graduate students, many of the questions, and we'll get into some questions at the end because I know we're going to let some people call in or email us with some questions. What are the takeaways from the program? You know, Dr. Rare, if I commit the financial resources, the intellectual hours, become part of this program, what am I going to walk away with? And here's some which I think, having been in advocacy, are really important. We're going to be sure that you understand how to create and execute a successful advocacy plan. You work for a nonprofit. The nonprofit wants to increase its visibility and activities and its results in Africa. How do we do that? You just don't show up on Monday and on Tuesday expect to get real results. You have to figure out, how do we create a plan that will work in the culture, with the governments, with all the interested coalition partners, which gets results. We're going to help teach you how to maneuver through political and government cultures to get the right result that you want. And I think that speaks for itself, but even in Washington, D.C., in my time before the U.S. Congress, so many trained lobbyists don't really understand, well, what's the politics of this, and why is it important that I understand the politics in order to get a result that my company, my nonprofit, my NGO desires. We're going to be sure that you're familiar and you're able to use effectively and wisely the myriad of advocacy tools: personal relationships, surveys, grassroots, coalitions. I think there's probably upwards of 15 to 20 or more advocacy tools which we want to be sure you are, social media, which we want to sure you are familiar with and you're going to be able to use as a way to advance those causes that you are being paid for or you believe in. I'm sorry, Jonathan, could you go back to that slide for just a second? I just don't want to forget one more thing. Expecting the unexpected. How do you react to that? Or how do you proactively work for the unexpected and resolve it? And long-term relationships. If you're going to end up in a global advocacy position, if you're going to be working for a global PR firm, if you're going to be doing something affecting NGOs, in order to move up and be successful, you have to build and sustain long-term relationships. And we're going to show you some tips and some, I don't want to say tricks, but techniques to stay kind of top of mind with people that you may or may not see around the globe. More benefits to graduate students, right? Having global experts, the best of the best in the fields of lobbying, PR, campaign management, talking to you, you asking questions, really having that networking and dialogue, on the ground learning from the global perspective, residencies, networking with global leaders associated with the program, senior people in companies, nonprofits, NGOs, people who might take a shine to you or a liking to you and go, you know what, when you're done with this program, send me an email. That's exactly the kind of reaction we want to help you create. And then I think, looking back, I have a PhD in economics. I love the fact that I got a master's degree in economics, that I went on and got a PhD. But I wish this program would have been around when I was looking at what master's programs to be involved with, because I think this is going to be an unparalleled experience.
This is Jonathan here again, and I want to kind of step in and talk a bit about some of the career resources we have here, because coming to grad school is obviously a big financial commitment, but the reason many people go to grad school is to get a better job, to make more money, to maybe pivot career-wise. And we have a number of resources specifically for our students at the Graduate School of Political Management. You'll also have access to the broader GW network and the GW Career Service resources, but we have some of our own here. We have a Director of Career Services, Mag Gottlieb, who's terrific and will spend time one-on-one with each of our students. We have basically weekly meet and greets around Washington. So one week you might go to the Government Affairs Office of eBay. The next you might go to Meet the Press. The next you might go to an association or to Capitol Hill or to a big PR agency. So we're constantly,
Jonathan, or to the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund, or the myriad of quasi-international institutions and enterprises, all that have offices in Washington.
Right. And in addition to that, when you go to these host cities as part of your residencies, for example, we had a group that was recently in Brazil, and they met with some of the government affairs folks from Nike. With the World Cup and the Olympics coming to Brazil, Nike is really trying to increase its foothold in that nation, and we wanted our students to get some exposure to some of the key decision makers down there. Our faculty are also actively reaching out to various companies around the world, like Microsoft, big global PR firms like Edelman, to further relationships with our students. So there is an enormous component to kind of career development. And with that, I want to kind of have Dr. Ayer talk about some of the outcomes that our students can see as far as careers. We've got a couple examples up here on the screen, but what are some jobs that our graduates could be taking?
Right, so with a master's degree in advocacy in the global environment, there's really a myriad of opportunities really focused on what your internal interests are. For example, as Jonathan said, there are the Fortune 1000, many of whom are moving in international areas around the world where they need people in Latin America who can cover Argentina, Brazil, Peru, and who are sensitive, either knowing how to move the governments to a more positive reaction for the companies, or know how to find out how to move the government. And that's what we're going to train you as part of the program. But let's say you're not focused primarily on the commercial side. You want to have an experience working for the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund in a certain region. You will have, I always refer to it as the treasure map, but you really get a treasure map of how to affect change in a positive way, which employers will look for. I give speeches all around the country, in fact, all around the world, where I talk to undergraduate and graduate students, and many of them might understand public policy. They might be able to tell you water policy in 3 continents. But when you say to them, well, how do you change the policy, they look at you and they go, well, no one's really taught us that. And what we're going to teach you in this master's is how to affect change. So I think that gives you a kind of a differentiating point with employers, potential employers. I think the third point is, maybe you're driven by a passion. Maybe you want to end childhood diabetes, or you want to bring food to people who are unfortunately hungry around the world. This degree will help you positively impact that mission or passion that you might have. So, it's for people interested in international business. It's for people interested in kind of mission focused nonprofits and NGOs. It's for people who are interested in learning about cultures around the world and immersing themselves in cultures. International public relations efforts where you might move through multiple countries with messages, how to reduce AIDS or, how to buy more sneakers, whatever the message from the public affairs firm is, how do you do that effectively?
And we also, I'll add, have one of the students who's gone on our global residencies is himself attempting to run for the EU Parliament. So he's gone on all of these trips, actually, and going on these trips, he's sort of sought to establish credibility and connections with business executives and other politicians in these countries and in the diplomatic community. So I want to get to a few questions, and also before we do that, just remind you, if you want any more information about our program or the application process, to go to our website, and that's www.gspm.gwu.edu. You're also welcome to call into our office, and the number is 202-994-6000. It's here at the bottom of the page. And Dr. Rare's email is a pretty easy email address, davidrare@gwu.edu, also at the bottom of the page.
And Jonathan, let me just interrupt and say, if you have any questions about the program, if you have any issues that you're just, God, this is really interesting, but does it work for me? We want to be sure our students are engaged and happy and intellectually challenged, because we will challenge you intellectually. Don't hesitate to email me or to call me for that matter.
Thank you, David. Now, first question we have is there a cap to the number of students who can start the program in any given term?
Well, yes and no. We're trying to cap this at under 20 students. We don't want to be exclusive, but we want to be sure that the students in the program drive significant or are recipients of significant value.
That's for the inaugural class, right?
For the inaugural class, I think that as we move through classes, we're not, I can never imagine having 100 people in our Fundamentals of Global Political Management class, which I will be team teaching with a fellow who has run an international political consulting firm and is extremely well known around the world. But the idea is we want to be sure that those students, 15, 20 or so, get as much value, conversation, networking, feel free to ask questions before class, after class, online, postings, to drive real value, because we know it's a significant commitment of time and money and effort.
Great. And what kind of student will be enrolling in this program? What do they look like? What do they do? What's their academic profile? Maybe I can answer that question a bit. But as far as who the student is, who do you envision, David?
Yeah. Well, let me be honest, since this is a new, first of its kind, no one else has it in the world program, it's going to take us a couple years really to have a better demographic of the people interested in taking these courses and getting the master's degree. But I think we're going to have clusters. We've positioned this for generally people between the ages of 25 to 34, cluster 1. 25 to 34, maybe in their first job, have an undergraduate degree, whatever they studied. It's not really as interesting or as challenging or intellectually as challenging as they thought. They're interested in international advocacy, or they're interested in international, making a difference. That's one cluster. I think another cluster will be people who are perhaps a little younger, who come out of undergraduate universities, given the tight job market, who aren't getting as strong a reaction from the employer community, and want to do something meaningful until they get that right job. And rather than getting a no or hanging out Friday nights at the pub, they're saying, you know what, I want to make a personal investment to further differentiate myself with a degree that employers are really going to want. That's the second cluster. I do think we have a third cluster of people who are already engaged in public relations, perhaps internationally, advocacy, perhaps globally, who will see this as an opportunity to move up the career ladder. I'm in Hong Kong. I've been there for 5 years. my company really likes me in Hong Kong because I do a very good job, but I would like to move to Brussels, or I would like to go to Sao Paulo or Buenos Aires. It's hard for me to do that, but if I have a master's degree, it strengthens my ability to negotiate, to be perceived as being more of an expert, and to increase my salary.
Right. Now, as far as the kind of admissions criteria that our committee typically looks for in applicants, is there, I would say, three primary factors, and there are some secondary factors as well. But the primary factors are A, the rigor of your undergraduate curriculum. So what kind of classes have you been taking, where did you go to school, those kinds of things. Secondly, how did you perform within that curriculum? So maybe you didn't get the best grade in the world on an engineering class, but you did great on all your international relations classes. The committee takes those kinds of things into account. And the third thing is the committee likes to see some type of demonstrated experience in the field, be it work experience, be it internships, if you're a recent grad, maybe some club involvement. The committee wants to see that you've had some association with the particular discipline. Now, we do have some folks who are career switchers, so maybe someone's been teaching for a few years and as an undergrad studied international relations and would like to get back into that discipline. So that's common as well. So there aren't really any disqualifiers. The committee is pretty open-minded about looking at all of your details, and it's a pretty fair process.
And if I can jump in, Jonathan, and say that we have undergraduates who've been in communications, international relations, politics, government, economics, business administration. It really runs the gambit. Really, the unifying graduate school students are those that want to take the combination of political campaign techniques, public relations techniques and principles, advocacy and lobbying techniques, and combine those just to be a spectacular individual who can make a difference for their company, for their nonprofit, for their NGO, for their enterprise, for their quasi-national organization.
Great. And a final question we have here is, how can I learn more about the program? Can I visit campus? What would that process entail?
Well, a lot of this is on the website. I know it's up on the board, but really look through that. You can call us, you can email me, or you can email GSPM as well. We would encourage you to stop by and see us. In fact, in about 8 minutes, I'm meeting with a potential student to fill one of those limited slots. She's very, very interested in the program. And I get to know us, and we want to get to know you as well. You know, this is going to be a rigorous, intellectual, hard-working master's degree, but I think those who put a tremendous amount of time, effort, and commitment into it will get a lot out of it.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Rare. And again, if you have any further questions, feel free to call us or to email Dr. Rare or to check out our website. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please stand by.